Hi, my name's Josh, and I'm an engineer here with Buildkite in the pipelines team. We've been busy working on the Buildkite Agent Stack for Kubernetes, and today I'd like to show you two of the improvements that we recently shipped. In older versions, in order to install the stack, you needed many different pieces of information. You needed a Buildkite agent token, a GraphQL enabled token, an organization slug, and you needed to find the cluster UUID. Starting with version 0.28, only the agent token is required. The underlying API has changed, so we no longer need to use the GraphQL APIs to retrieve jobs to run. Additionally, we can infer the cluster UUID and org slug from the agent token itself. Here I have a previously deployed version of the stack. It's version 0.27, and I'm going to upgrade it. Here's the values.yaml file that I used to deploy it. As you can see, it has a few bits of information that we no longer need. The GraphQL token, the org slug, and the cluster UUID. Additionally, in version 0.29, it no longer infers that you want a queue called Kubernetes. Instead, it's able to detect that with a cluster, there is a default cluster queue, and that is the new default cluster. That's what I had to pick in my previous deployment by specifically setting the queue tag. But because that's the default for my cluster, I can get rid of that as well. And given that there's no other config, I can pretty much delete most of my file, leaving just the agent token. Let's deploy it. And there we go. New version has already been deployed. And Buildkite has detected that the stack is up and running. Well, let's run a job. The pod's running. The job's running. And it's done. Wonderful. Secondly, we also changed the flow of environment variables within each pod that runs a job. Previously, each container in the pod would receive all the job environment variables via the pod definition, which is an object written to the Kubernetes cluster database. Additionally, it would duplicate these job environment variables across each container in the pod. If you only have a few of these jobs running, it's not likely to cause a problem, but when you have thousands of them running, this could cause higher load on your Kubernetes cluster database. In version 0.28 of our stack and later, the job environment variables are instead passed from the agent container to the other containers using a socket, which cuts down on the amount of waste and duplicated job environment variables. Here I have the environment variables from the pod definition used in an older version of the stack. Here is the definition from the job that I just ran. And as you can see, the command container only needed really only 4 environment variables to figure out what it needed to do. The agent container needed a couple more, but still vastly fewer than previously. This reduces the object size in the Kubernetes cluster database and saves you time, disk ops, and bandwidth. I hope you've enjoyed this quick overview of 2 of the improvements we launched in the newer versions of the Kubernetes stack. And I hope you have a good day. See you around.